I started telling it like it is, to share knowledge and stories. So put it in there, get in here, get involved. Let's have some fun. I would like to thank Community Now for sponsoring this. We are having a mental wellness day with Community Now on December 15th. It is going to be a live event. There's going to be some great people speaking there. Reaching out is the hardest step. The first step is the hardest step. So please sign up. The Eventbrite will be in the comments section shortly. I am extremely pumped about my conversation here shortly. James, how are you today?
I'm great, Jade. Thanks for having me today.
No, thank you for spending a little time with us. And you should be on the beach right now.
I should be. We should all be on the beach.
On the beach.
Because it's winter's coming, so we should go and hang out at the beach.
Well, I agree with that. I would rather be on the beach. Maybe I'll do this live from the beach one day. Our next interview will be live from the beach.
I've got all the setup for it, so just call me when you need to.
That sounds like a plan. What I'm going to do, I don't want to take up too much time with small talk here. I'll do a brief introduction, James, and then we'll get after it, because you've got so much wealth of knowledge to share. So, James is an entrepreneur, angel investor, venture capitalist, and volunteer. He co-founded the global fintech company Wave. He is a managing partner at Thin Air Labs, overseeing Thin Air Labs Fund 1 and the capital team. He has worked with thousands of entrepreneurs to help them scale their companies and build what's next. We talked a little bit about this before, but it's extraordinary to see someone that's had success like yourself come back and help others be successful. This is the most important part, to me, and it's inspiring to me and many other people's in this ecosystem. So we'll talk about Thin Air Labs in a little bit, but why don't we share your entrepreneurial journey a little bit with some of our guests?
Sure. So I guess, I come from an immigrant family. My parents came over the day after they got married and landed in Toronto. And so I had that as the context of my upbringing. And, my dad was the first person to go to university in his village, and he got his degree, and that was his path to success. And, so that was kind of the push. But I was always entrepreneurial. I always had this independence in me. I wanted to do things my way. Sometimes things didn't make sense that other people made sense too. So I had this entrepreneurial kind of way about me, but this push to be much more conventional, like go to university, get your degree, go get a job, and make sure it has a pension. That kind of a mentality was underlying it, and it wasn't strict by any stretch. It wasn't like my parents were pushing me, but that was kind of the pathway that was put in front of me. I ended up dropping out of university 3 times. I really tried, I tried to do it, but it didn't really work out. But after that, I ended up in an organization. I dropped out of school for the 3rd time, ended up, it was after Christmas, ended up working for this tax company. And it was quite entrepreneurial, and it was a meritocracy. So they judged you by how much you did, the quality of work you did, what your metrics were, and you were promoted based on that. It had nothing to do with your education. It was what could you perform at. And so that was the perfect spot for me in the way that I operated. So I worked inside of that company for 16 years, but I really struggled, especially in the last probably like 6-8 years of that, with my entrepreneurialism. As I started reaching the boundaries of where that organization could allow me to grow, I needed to push out into other areas. And so that led to the creation of Wave. I had done some other small things in between, but this was a really big step. And I was 38 at the time. And a friend of mine, Kirk Simpson, who's still the CEO of the company, him and I started having this conversation about what we could do together. And it turned into what became this, larger than life company. That wasn't the design. That's where we fell into. And as we continued building the company, building the software and approaching the market, we realized we actually had something really big on our hands. The opportunity was large. We were getting a lot of attention from the market. And so we started raising capital. And I remember having this conversation as we raised our Series A with our great investor that we had, Lochrie out of Charles River Ventures, who's now no longer in the VC world. He said to us, as we raised this $5 million or $5.5 million, which back then was a huge deal in Canada for a Series A, he said to us, "We're not selling this thing at 100 million." And I just had this moment of like, "We're not? Okay." All right, that sounds good. That sounds great. But it was a real journey of figuring out product, figuring out the market, building a team together, staying in partnership with Kirk, figuring out investors, and continuing to iterate through really challenging times as you approach markets, and you have failures, and you have, things go wrong with your team and those types of things. And it was, a constant struggle to build a great company. And I give a lot of credit to Kirk on the company building side of this, because that was really what he was great at, is understanding how to scale a company. I was great at the product, like that was my domain. I understood it. I understood the market, but he was the one that really grasped that growth thing, and I came along for the ride and obviously helped and learned and all that stuff. But so I owe Kirk a great deal of gratitude because of where his expertise lay, and the way that he executed against that. And that's the reason, the combination of those things is why we exited the company for $537 million a couple of years ago. And that was a great outcome for everybody. In 2015, I actually left the operating role in the company, so 4 years before the exit. And I remained on the board, and I remained a strategic advisor. And I jumped in a little bit here and there when they asked me for a little bit of help. But largely at that stage, I started focusing on other things. And my entire career had always been around entrepreneurs, whether I was playing around with it myself, working with them in the accounting industry, building products for them with Wave. It was just this constant, and that's what I went back to, was working with entrepreneurs. And I started doing that in Calgary. And what I found was that Calgary was going through the same process of transforming their economy that Toronto went through after the financial crisis. So there was this catalyst, this event that happened in Toronto that created disruption in the financial markets, high unemployment, capital disruption. And then as things started ramping up, the opportunity to do something different was there, because the entrepreneurs were working in that area because they couldn't work anywhere else because of the crisis. So I saw that happening in Calgary in 2015 as well, but just in the micro phases. And we wanted to live in Calgary. It was a place that we called home previous to Wave. And I really enjoy it. And I enjoy the people. And I wanted to build it again. I wanted to go through that process again. So I started investing in companies starting in 2016. And it was just kind of experimenting. Like, how do I invest in a company? How do I be an investor and that persona rather than an operator, that's somebody that owns all the problems and is driving the success of the company? That's not the role of an investor. So over a couple of years, I tried to figure that out with my entrepreneurs. Sometimes I was really successful at being the investor persona. Sometimes I was much more the operator. But over time, I learned that skill set. And then around 2019 into 2020, I've kind of figured it out. I needed a team behind me to help these entrepreneurs as early startups as they face the problems that could kill them in the seed stage. We knew how to avoid those things, because it's mostly human error that kills a company at that stage. It's always associated with time and money, right? If you run out of time, you run out of money. It's those two things, those two variables that you're trying to always kind of work through in the seed stage. And so we figured that piece out, and then we just started investing at a larger scale. So now, instead of having 4 companies that we originally started with, we're now up to about 28, nice. 29. I've got another deal coming very quickly here, but so I lose track of the numbers, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Well, as I said, it's always inspiring to see somebody who, unfortunately has to leave to build their company, but come back to their roots and give back. And then that's why I am such a big fan of Thin Air Labs. And I truly believe that, I'm more of the time thing that, that runs out for companies, right? And having somebody that like Thin Air, or even what we do at Pure Guidance, it's nice to have that team behind you where you can, make that phone call and talk to an Andrew, or talk to yourself, or talk to a Crystal and say, hey, you know what, I need some help here. What do you think? You've been down this road before. And I mean, I think Thin Air is going to be such an asset to our economy and our entrepreneurs moving forward.
Yeah, I think when you bring up that concept of reaching out for help and having access to people that have been there before and face those problems to give you different types of options and perspectives around how you're dealing with things, it's really it's an accelerant to them. And that's the key, right? And that's why, in the Thin Air Labs office, we've got a large office space, and we have a small team. That's for all of our other entrepreneurs to come and hang with us so that we can have those intersections, just by accident, and have that 3-minute conversation that otherwise doesn't happen, that can accelerate these companies by days or weeks or sometimes months, or avoid a catastrophic event, just by having that conversation because they're struggling with something. Most people don't reach out when they're struggling with something. So, bumping into them in the hallway, having that conversation, that's one of the most important things at this stage of a company.
Oh, I could not agree more, right? And you probably will agree. I mean, we are a collaborative ecosystem here in Alberta. It doesn't matter if it's a Calgary company, Edmonton company, Grand Prairie company. People are willing to help. Startup TNT has done that. Investors will step up and help. We've done that with companies like Nextdrop. Just been there for them. It's not about always the money. It's about making sure that these companies will be able to succeed and really help Alberta in general.
Yeah, that's it's a fun part of our ecosystem, is that level of collaboration and focus on building here. And I think it's not dissimilar from other places, but Calgary and Alberta, they have this culture that I think it comes from the chip on our shoulder around the energy industry and the divisions that happen around that with federal politics. I think the other aspect of it is, we come up through a world where we had to solve big problems to get the oil sands to work. We had to solve big problems. We had to do that ourselves. We had to figure out agriculture in a climate that really, why? Come on. Can you imagine farming 100 years ago in Alberta? Can you imagine what that would have been like? So it takes a community, and it's a small insular community that makes those things happen. And I think that's one of the big things that we see here, is that level of attachment to our roots and our future. And we're no different in Thin Air Labs. Community is one of the pillars that we focus on building. So we volunteer within the community. We sit on boards of not-for-profits or academia or those types of things. We want to ensure that the community is rising up around the ventures that we're building as well, because that's just as important for that next stage of growth.
And we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that next stage of growth, and whether it be 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, when more companies exit, they're going to look up to companies like yourself and say, hey, James was here. We want to invest back here. It's already happening where some of these, bigger companies with Hanif and Tiffany and Samed and already, angel investing, but other people are going to be doing it, and it's just going to be a really good cycle. And we're talking a little bit before, talking about the amount of growth, and people don't understand how big that growth is going to be over the next 2 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think that flywheel effect that you talk about, success breeding success, it's already happening here.
Yeah.
We're seeing it with, okay, James, I exited my company. All of a sudden I've got capital. I'm playing around and I'm investing in these companies and investing capital and expertise and experience to help them grow. We start seeing that happening with the teams out of Solium or Benevity that have had very successful outcomes. We're seeing that capital recycle. And what I love about this industry, it is an exponentially growing industry. So the number of deals that we expect to see at this point next year is twice as much. And the year after that, it'll be twice as much again. So you're seeing exponential growth happening inside of it. So that happens with the capital side, which then transfers into the people side and employment. And then it transfers into the wealth creation at the exits, which is phenomenal for the ecosystem, because when those exits happen, people will buy their beach homes and their fancy cars and all that stuff, and then they'll get to work, because that's what we do. We build companies. The people that are in this game just really like building companies. They're interested in it. They're engaged in it. These are the people they hang out with every day, and so it just recycles and continues to go. I love that about this industry.
Oh, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. There are so many great companies, but there are even better people behind these companies right now.
Yeah, I think that you're a very purpose-driven person, and so am I. And I like to work with those types of people. Like, I want to get out of bed and be motivated to work on a project that means something. And so there's so many people that think that way in our local environment, that think, hey, I can take something. Like we were talking about Hanif and Tiffany over at Cement, And you think about that, on the surface, that's an enterprise tool, it's a financial tool, a crazy fintech play. But at the heart of it, there's a really strong purpose about helping people who get into financial trouble in large consumer companies and end up in collections. And that's coming from a really, really strong personal place for those two as founders. And when you understand that and you understand what's driving these people, it's just easy to get out of bed and help them. It's easy to invest in their companies when you think they're also going to be successful financially. So it's, I love that part of it.
No, I agree. I mean, big fans, obviously, of them as well. So now you've come back to Alberta. You're creating the Thin Air Labs Fund #1. I guess let's talk a little bit about that. How close are you to finishing it? What do you think? Are you able to share, what you will be able to do with it, moving forward?
Yeah, so we're in the process of fundraising today. So we're approaching our close of our first close, which is a $30 million target, which we anticipate closing the second week of January. Okay. And so we're well on track to do that. We're really excited about the participation of Albertans in the fund. I think that's a critical part of why we did this, was to expose our local capital to the organic opportunities that we're growing today in Alberta, and keeping some of that wealth here instead of just investors from around the world swooping in and taking parts of these companies. That's a really, really critical part of what we're doing. But we are raising a $100 million fund. So we are going to see second and third closes. And that's largely due to institutional investors that take longer to get to the point of saying yes through their diligence process. So we expect to have that closed through sometime in 2022, but be operating in the fund in January, which it's super exciting, because the timing in Alberta for this type of a fund is perfect, because we're seeing this explosion of growth that's been percolating under the surface for quite a while, and now all of a sudden it's an overnight success. So the timing on this one I'm really happy with it, with what we've done here.
Well, I can't wait till you start dispensing this cow. I mean, I'm pumped about it.
That's exactly right. It's a lot of work to get a fund up and running.
Yeah,
but that's when the real work. Once you get it closed, that's when the real work starts, right? Is deploying the capital, working with the companies, and showing that growth. And you ask, okay, so what's coming next? Well, within that fund, we expect to invest in somewhere between 38 and 44 companies. We're going to invest in the early stages of those companies, and we've got a team behind us that focuses on making sure those companies are strong. We're building a strong foundation for growth. We're doing the right things around how governance happens, and we look at product, go-to-market strategies, pricing, all of those things that can trip up a company as they bring themselves to market. That's where we focus on helping the entrepreneur be successful and be efficient, and avoid the catastrophic failures that can happen at this stage of a company. But we're looking at very specific types of companies that we're going to invest in, and those are global scale, multi-billion-dollar types of companies. So we're not looking for a company that may take over the Canadian market. We're looking for companies that are going to be major players in global markets, and specifically on the areas that are going to help human beings. And that plays out in two ways. We're motivated by that as humans. We want to be working on things that help people. But also the ROI on those types of investments tends to be higher, because if you're creating really strong value for people, and it doesn't matter where that value happens, but if you're helping people with your product or service, people will pay more for it. They'll keep using it when they really can't afford it, and they'll tell all their friends about it. And that's the important thing about figuring out something that is about human value, and that's what and human impact. That's what we want to invest in, are those types of companies.
And I think you've already proven that. I mean, two deals that we're in together, even through myself and TNT, is Arbor and True Angle, both fit that category.
Absolutely, yeah. Arbor, that's a special company today. When I think about the impact that can have on the way that consumers view the way that they spend their money and who they spend it with, and the impact that could have on the environment or people. It's the timing in the market for that one is right now, and we need it desperately in the world. So I think we're going to see great things out of them. And True Angle, hey, why not help people that are struggling with a catastrophic failure of their body?
Yes.
in an area where, I can't swallow anymore because I've had an injury, a cancer, a stroke, whatever, or psychological issues. Well, I couldn't believe the market size of that when I started talking to Jana about it,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe the solution that was in the market at the time and what they were bringing to market. This is a massive opportunity to help people that desperately need help and change their lives with a simple device.
I know.
It's crazy. And so the market opportunity on that one's off the charts, but also the human opportunity, the human impact that can happen from that one is really, really significant. So huge fan of what they're doing out there in True Angle.
Yeah, I didn't even know what dysphagia was before I met Jana. I was like,
yeah, me either.
Like, holy
Me
smokes,
either.
I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I got educated really, really quickly on that one.
Yeah.
So I know you talked about having, we want to get into the early stage. So what does early stage mean to you? Are you looking at the angel round, or are you going to go maybe, some seed, or are you going to save some of that money for Series A? Do you have a percentage that you can share?
So it depends on really the company, the opportunity, when we catch them. But we want to invest as early as possible. So we've talked about Tiffany and Hanif again, and I'll use these guys. They're the darling of the portfolio because they've done so well.
Yeah.
But we invested in them when it was just Hanif walking around the street with a coffee in his hand, going, "I've got an idea," and that's just, I was quite lucky. I don't want to take a lot of credit for that. I was just Hanif's friend and mentoring him inside of a different company that he had started up. And he came to me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea." And we're walking around the street, and I'm like, "Hanif, that sounds like shit. What are you doing? Like, go back to your other company." What do I know, right? Anyway, so I invested in that one in the earliest stage. So we're up for that, for the right opportunity, the right team, the right type of market play. But typically what we see is a team that has had some experience developing some type of prototype. Typically they're not in market yet. We like that a lot. It gives us the ability to understand how they build, how they think about their product, and how they're thinking about the future. And if we can catch them at that stage, and then mix them with some expertise. Now, when I say mix them with expertise, we do not want to give them like instructions. We want to show them, these are all the options that you have available to you. These are some of the experiences that we've seen in the market. This is some of the people that maybe you should talk to help them accelerate through those things. That's when we love to work with entrepreneurs as they're continuing to build really the foundations of their companies.
No, absolutely. Again, I'm talking with James Lochrie, the founder, partner at Thin Air Labs. I put the Arbor website up in the comment section for anybody. You can check out Thin Air Labs and, of course, True Angle. So click on those websites if you want to, learn more about any of these companies out there. So again, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your stories here. And you talked a little bit about what's next, but I want to go past. I want you to think maybe 10 years down the road. Where do you see Thin Air Labs and even your fund?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'll use a sports analogy because you've got all the sports jerseys behind you. Is like, we're really in the first inning of Thin Air Labs, and so there's a whole bunch of evolution that we're going to be doing internally, and there's a whole bunch of evolution that the market's going to do over that time period. So I expect us to sway with the market as the market cycles happen. We're in a very, very bullish time in this industry. I believe that's going to continue for a number of years. I don't know when it's going to come to an end or start slowing down, but it will eventually. So we'll be paying attention to that, and we'll be building accordingly as the market continues to give us signals. What I'm really hopeful for is, this is what I love to do. I just want to keep doing these things. I want to work with teams that are building cool shit. I want to work with people that are building it with the purpose in mind. I want to make sure that I'm doing it with people that are dedicated and resilient and hardworking, and all those characteristics of strength in an entrepreneur. And so 10 years from now, I'm going to be 61. I don't expect to be slowing down. So if I was to project out success over the course of the next 10 years, I would think that we're going to be one of the largest investors in this space in Canada. I'm hopeful that the early successes that we've had, the win stays at our back, and we continue to see that in our portfolio and drive the growth of the Alberta ecosystem and the wealth of the cities that are within it. I think that's really why we're here. We're here to build. We're a bunch of builders. We're not a financial institution. We use finance as one of the tools to build businesses, and we just want to continue building businesses. And we want to be behind some of the great entrepreneurs that are in Alberta. Fast forward 10 years, I don't know. We've got 100 entrepreneurs that have created great companies that have helped millions of people around the world. That would be something that I'd be pretty happy to be able to say.
Man, that's an inspirational goal. I love hearing that. I think that's just absolutely wonderful. And I'll be one of the guys out there cheering you all along the way and trying to help the best I can. I mean, I just love that, right? Giving back. It's such an important part of not only our ecosystem, but just as a human race and people. Like,
there's no doubt.
Right?
No doubt. I'm not sitting in front of you if not for the help of others. The people that have volunteered their time to give me a little bit of advice here and there, the people that have believed in myself, my businesses, the teams that I've worked with. It's, without the grace of others, I'm not sitting in front of you. I'm probably sitting in a camper somewhere.
I'd probably be in jail, but
I was trying to be nice to myself.
Yeah, I know. But I agree with you, right? The people around me and the people that give back. And I mean, I'm just trying to be as, to the people that I was grateful enough to help me, I can give back half of what they were able to give back to me. I consider my life successful.
Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly. So I know, this, my last question has been the same for almost 200 episodes. I thought literally this question would be gone. I would hear everything, but I just haven't. And it's one of when I post it up there on Friday mornings, people really look at it because there's so many different aspects of this question and so many different answers that I still just love hearing them. So if you had one piece of advice, James, for a small business startup or entrepreneur, what would that be?
Don't stop moving. Keep going. Like, I think that's the key, and that's specific to the type of entrepreneurs that I work with. So that may not apply to everybody. And that's an important thing about advice is it almost never applies to everybody. Just don't stop moving. It's, a lot of people say, how do you get started? Well, take the first step and then take the next one and then the next one. But if you don't take the first one, you're never going to get going. Like, take that risk, take that jump, because that first step, you can always step backwards. Keep going. When you hit a wall, find a way to keep moving. Do not let anything stop you. As soon as you stop moving, you're like a shark. You're just going to die. It's just a matter of time. Time is such an important thing. So just keep going. And it doesn't matter if you're not sure if that's the right next step to take. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to see failures. You are just try to make sure they're not going to kill you. And always know you can take a step backwards, regroup, and then take the next step forward. Just keep moving.
I love that. I mean, and I'd even take that to one step further is reach out, ask for help, right? Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And it's something that I say all the time. And again, whether peer guidance yourself or a mentor, or you go to a rainforest today at noon and you sit there and say, hey, I have a problem. Can anybody help me? Like, away you go. Yeah. There's going to be someone that has gone through what you have gone through that will be able to share their story with you.
Yeah. The best entrepreneurs in the world are the ones that are best at doing that. Reaching out to the right people, spending time with them and investing in that because it's all about learning. And the only way you learn is by working with other people that have been there and done it before, or going out and failing. That's how you learn. So better to learn from other people's failures than your own.
I totally agree with that. And again, I really appreciate you coming on today, James, sharing your story, what your vision is for Thin Air Labs. This is the first ever, I'm going to have back-to-back Thin Air Labs. Andrew's going to come on next week. We'll get into the nuts of how Thin Air Labs is going to work, because again, I am just a proponent of the help that you're going to supply to all the startups at all levels and all industries. It's just a really good time for Calgary. So thank you for giving back and all that you're going to be doing to our ecosystem. It's inspiring to all of us.
Oh, thanks. That's really nice to hear, and I appreciate you having us on, and not just myself, but the team as they're coming together. So it's really appreciate getting to get to know you and being on your show.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for listening again. All the links are on the comment section, the Thin Air Labs. You can check out True Angle. Again, the Community Now mental wellness event is December 15th. Click on the Community Now there. Arbor's there. Anything that we talked about, they are all there. So again, James, thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Jade.
All right.
Catch up soon.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.